Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on a Friday. I initially thought, you know what, there really isn't too much going on, so maybe tonight I'll take the night off and make it a 3-day weekend. But then I said, you know what, let's do the live stream. There's a couple of things happening in the longer term that I think we should touch upon. First off, we have maybe a possibility of some severe weather in the northeast and southern areas of the northeast and the northern mid-Atlantic, I believe, on Tuesday. And we've been talking about the tropics a bit lately. Many of you have pointed out how quiet it has been so far. In reality, we've had 2 named storms. So we were actually about where we should be for this point in the hurricane season. It's only August the 9th, and we could go for a little while longer before things start to heat up. But I'm seeing indications that beginning later next week, we may have some things to look at, and I'm going to also couple that with the fact we were talking back weeks ago about the fact that the El Nino was very weak. I don't know if you saw the story. I did post a link to it yesterday. If not, you can Google it. NOAA did come out with a mid-season update, and they have doubled down on their forecast, calling for above normal activity, and they are basing it on the fact that the El Nino is no longer there. It's gone. And I think what you're seeing to a certain extent, there are a few other factors going on, but I think what you're seeing is the fact that the El Nino waned into the beginning of the summer, so there's a bit of the atmosphere tends to lag on things, just like the seasons lag. I think you could make a case that the atmosphere is lagging a bit, and we're just waiting for it to catch up. So that perhaps would suggest that the back half of the hurricane season is going to be very robust, as opposed to what we've seen so far. But I'm still thinking that we're going to probably start to see some things to look at later next week, and I think at least initially it might be something of what is often referred to as a quote-unquote homegrown variety system, something that forms off the southeast coast of the U.S., for example, would be considered homegrown, and where the origin of the system is not necessarily tropical in origin, but rather it comes from, it generates initially from a non-tropical system that gradually warms and becomes a tropical one. So we're going to get into all of that in just a little bit. Just very quickly, I'm going to do this at the top. For those of you who are really interested in weather and it just kind of wraps around your entire day and night, you might consider, I do have a subscription platform on Patreon, and it's just $2 a month. I'm going to put the link in the chat. If you're on the chat, a number of you on here are already Patreon members, and I truly appreciate that. It's just $2 a month, and there's a link on the descriptor to this live stream or the descriptor to this video if you're watching it on a replay. So you might consider that, because we'll be doing we do extra coverage on there that I don't do in other places, including a Weather in 10 video, which Patreon members got to see this morning. Okay, and one other thing really fast. If you haven't already, I do have a free weather app on Google Play or on the App Store. The Google Play, the Android version, has been updated. So if you do have the app, be sure that you have your updates turned on for it, or you may have to manually update it, or perhaps you might have to delete it and then re-download it and reinstall it. The new update takes you to your own location by default. So you don't have to put your location in on the local forecast page. You can get your local forecast. It'll just take you right there. And the other thing I've added is a Long Island tab. For those of you on Long Island who want your own forecast, I don't always get the time to do it, but I do put up Long Island-based posts from time to time. So there's a separate Long Island tab on the new app. Okay, and that link is up there also on the chat. Otherwise, you can go to Google Play or you can go to the App Store. It's Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. On the App Store, on the Google Play, actually, you can just put Joe Chaffee. Okay, I've done my shameless self-promotion, so now let's get on with the weather. I want to start with WPC's rainfall forecast for the next 7 days because it kind of tells the tale, excuse me, as to where things are going. Now, you notice that there is a ton of rain out in the Atlantic, extending back into coastal North and South Carolina, down into Georgia, and along the Gulf Coast. So when you see something like this, if you didn't look at any other weather map and didn't know what was going on, you could look at this and say there's a frontal boundary there. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. We have a frontal boundary there now. We're going to have another frontal boundary there toward the latter part of next week. And that frontal boundary, by the way, is going to perhaps play a role in the possibility of something tropical forming off the southeast coast of the United States. And I also want to emphasize, too, first of all, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. Second of all, even if it does happen, I'm going to show you that it's more than likely that if something does form out there, it'll basically be an ocean system, at least from what we're seeing right now. The other thing to notice is that there's heavy precip being indicated on the order of about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches from southern New England westward. Kind of has a little drop off there in east central PA. It's probably some shadow effect from the mountains, and then picks up again in western PA across Ohio, northern Indiana, the lower lakes, and back into Iowa and on up into parts of Minnesota and South Dakota. There is a wave that is coming out that is going to set up the possibility of some thunderstorms and severe weather, I think, maybe for Tuesday for southern areas of the Northeast and also for the northern parts of the mid-Atlantic states. I'm not 100% sure on that yet. The pieces are there, and I'm a firm believer, as you all know, that the trend is your friend, and you just kind of go along with it until the pattern breaks down. And we've seen this system is remarkably similar to all the ones that have produced severe weather outbreaks in the last 6 weeks in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. So I don't see why this one would be any different. The only thing is it's always the devil's going to be in the details. So you want to see where the warm sector sets up, where the 70-plus dew point's going to be. And that's a short-range forecast issue, something that we're not going to really be able to get a good handle on until maybe on Sunday. We can only guess at it at this point, but at least you get a flavor. When you look at these rainfall forecast maps from the Weather Prediction Center, you get a good idea as to what they're thinking, and you can kind of decipher what the overall pattern is by looking at where the precip is laid out. Now, on the satellite loop tonight, one of the things that you'll notice in the Northeast is that there are some clouds, a little pop-up popcorn-type clouds that were around this afternoon and this evening. You can also see the clouds that are flowing northwest to southeast. There's a very strong upper air jet and a cold trough in the eastern part of the United States. So in spite of the fact that the air here was pretty dry today, we had dew points down in the upper 50s and low 60s, that cold trough in the upper atmosphere, that cold flow aloft, created some instability, and that actually produced a few pop-up thunderstorms. They were widely scattered, if not downright isolated in some places. Most people in my region from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England didn't see a thing, but there were a couple of strong cells that formed during this afternoon and into this evening in parts of New Jersey, and then a couple of them moved over New York City and went into parts of Long Island. Now that we're past sunset, this stuff is all fading away, and it really is all about the northwest flow over the next couple of days. Meanwhile, you've got showers and storms breaking out this evening down in the Gulf Coast. You can see the high cloud top blow off of the cloud tops happening along the Gulf states and in Florida and off the Florida west coast. That's where it's a little bit busy on the radar. And if you look how the clouds are turning, this is all rotating around an upper high. The clouds are actually turning anticyclonically. You go back in the southwest, and those clouds and some Pacific tropical moisture moving from south to north. You've got the clouds running on the boundary of where the jet is and the upper high. That's where you're seeing an outbreak of showers and storms tonight. You have the clouds moving west to east from Kansas and Oklahoma eastward across the Tennessee and lower Ohio Valley, and then they go north to south. They make the turn there. So that's all rotating around the upper high. Gulf moisture coming in from the east. You've got the tropical moisture coming up from the Pacific, and on it goes. And the northern jet, also very evident by if you watch the clouds coming in off of California into the northwest, and then it makes the turn along the Canadian border and then drops southeastward from there down into the mid-Atlantic states. So this is a it's very interesting that we've got such an amplified look to things for the time of year it is. And troughs in the east that drop down, you get these shots of dry air, are not really that unusual. We've just had a number of summers over, not every summer, but we've had summers where those dry shots of dry air have been few and far between during the months of July and August. This summer, I think, has been different from that respect because the Canadian part of the jet stream has been so dominant and so prevalent throughout much of the last 6 or 7 weeks or so. We've got some severe weather tonight. And of course, remember, if you're watching this, it's 8:10 Eastern time, so at least the time of the map that you're seeing. So if you're watching this on a replay, obviously it's dated. So just make sure you go to weather.gov to your local National Weather Service office, so you got all the latest of what's going on. And you can see we've got still have a slight risk working in southeast Virginia into parts of northeasternmost North Carolina, with a little bit of marginal risk extending to the west. Marginal up to a slight and even a small area of enhanced risk. We have a working tornado watch at the moment, by the way, in South Dakota and right along the South Dakota-Nebraska border. There are some strong storms going on there. And not too often, but it does happen. We've got a severe thunderstorm watch up in the west, eastern Oregon, an area of slight risk there, with a larger area of marginal risk extending into Idaho and Nevada. So out in the west, getting a little bit of severe weather action. So we're gonna do a little paint box stuff tonight, and I will bring it forward for you so you can see it. Hang on one second. I'm having a moment here. I'm going to try to bring the paint box over. It's not behaving itself. Why is this not? Oh, there we go. Okay, so let me just make sure that's on the top. All right. Oh, come on, here. I'm having a little bit of difficulty here. Why am I not being able to see this? This is really annoying me. Oh. Okay. See, I'm 60 years old, so I'm entitled to have what I guess we could refer to as a senior moment. Okay. Now I will be able to bring this up. So hang on one second. There we go. All right. So I got the. Sorry it took so long. So here we have. I have up here for you. This is the upper air jet stream. I just used a different one. It's a little. It's got fewer height lines. Instead of seeing changes every 30 meters, you're seeing it every 60 meters. So it's a little bit easier, I think, to look at. And I've used this version of this map when we're talking about severe weather, and we look at the 700 millibar, roughly the 10,000 foot level. Here we're looking at the quote 500 millibar level, which is at about 18,000 feet, depending on where your point of reference is. But I want to just give you an idea, and this is from back on Wednesday, of just how far this jet stream is to our south. So you're going to follow the flow. So you've got, here's your lows. I'm going to just put lows so that you know where the circulations are going to be counterclockwise around them, okay? And there you go. So there's your upper low. This is driving the flow into the United States. Out in the Atlantic, you've got an upper high. Out in the Pacific, you have what looks like it's a weak upper high that runs east-west. out there. Actually, that's so we're good here. It's not a very strong high at all. You've got a few upper lows out up in the Atlantic, another one that's out east of the Aleutian. So you get the idea. And there's actually an upper high in the Gulf of Alaska with two upper lows to the south of that, to the west of California and Oregon. So when you look at which way, how the jet stream is flowing, our air is basically coming down from northern Canada down into the Great Lakes and Plains, and then it makes the turn and heads up out to the east-northeast. The southern part of those upper air westerly winds goes all the way down into southern Georgia. So it's allowing this particular air mass at the this is setting us up, of course, to the kind of jet stream that we're seeing right now. So now I'm going to grab the other one. I'm going to go a little forward now. We're going to take it to the present time, and I'm going to actually go into Sunday. And I'll show you what the jet stream is supposed to look like on Sunday. And here we still have, going in through the weekend, the flow, you're actually getting, a bit of a flow coming in off the Pacific. But again, this is not a setup that would be conducive for hot weather. We've got a trough off the East Coast. You've got another upper low that's sitting near Lake Winnipeg. You still have a little bit of a Canadian connection here that's coming down. So it pretty much, at least through the weekend, and into next week and beyond that, we're still maintaining this same idea with this flow that is being dominated by that jet stream in Canada, flexing its muscles from time to time. Sometimes you're seeing it move to the south. When it moves to the north, we warm up for a couple of days, and then we get a cold front to move on through. Now here we go through next week, and there is a short wave. It's a little hard to find because it's kind of broad, but there is a short wave trough that is moving through here for late Tuesday, and that I think produces the possibility of thunderstorms and some severe weather. And then as we go into next week, there's a stronger push. The jet tries to pull up as we move into the weekend. You see the westerlies now at this point pull up to about southern New York, southern New England. That's the southern extent of the westerly winds in the upper atmosphere. There's an upper high over Texas. So this is more of a late July, August look. It's a bit different. Now the model seems to be arguing in the longer term that it wants to maybe give up on the idea of the troughing in the east, and suddenly it wants to drop troughing down in the western part of the United States. Now I would caution you with this because of the fact that we've been down this road before, and the run right before this did not do that to the same extent. It didn't do it. From what I saw, it just still keeps troughing here fairly strong in the eastern part of the United States. And I have often said you want to make sure that you get a clear indication that something's changing in the upper air pattern, and having every other run flip around back and forth, to me, is not strong enough evidence to suggest that there's going to be a pattern shift down the road. There may very well be one coming toward the end of the month. We've been in this pattern that we've had for quite a long time. So I'm thinking that at some point, usually 6 to 8 weeks is about as far as you can take it when it comes to a pattern change. So it would be unusual to carry it much beyond that. So we'll see. But it's going to be important if we're going to start seeing systems in the tropics revving up. And by the way, let me just mention as well, I don't think, in my opinion, it's any great prediction to say that the tropics may rev up at the in about a week or so, because climate's in my favor to say that. Okay, so it's not a huge accomplishment if I wind up being correct, but I do see some indications that we are going to see some. The tropics begin to pick up. All right, but before we get there, I want to talk about Tuesday because that's going to we know what's happening at the moment with regards to the weekend as far as the Northeast down into the Mid-Atlantic states, the northern Mid-Atlantic states are concerned. We've got nice dry air. The weekend looks good. Maybe a couple of showers probably up in New England and upstate New York tomorrow because of the cold, unstable air aloft. But for the most part, it's as good a weekend as you're going to get for the for this time of year, for the second weekend in August. And it certainly beats going to 95 to 100. Now here comes that short wave for Tuesday. I pulled down that 700 millibar, that 10,000 foot level map, and the reason why I did this is because I have found that this level on the NAM especially has been not the GFS not so much, but the NAM especially has had a really good handle on the upper air winds. And what I'm particularly looking at are these brown and the dark brown spot areas that you see. Those are areas of strong gusty winds, jet streaks, and at that level of 45, 50 knots or more. And when you see that, it is usually a pretty good measure of the fact that you probably are going to have some strong thunderstorms and potentially even thunderstorms that produce rotation. It's really worked out well on how the model has presented itself with those streaks and what winds up happening. So on Tuesday, it's early. It's early in the game, but on Tuesday you can see this shortwave trough approaching Tuesday afternoon, and you do see some of these darker streaks showing up in parts of Pennsylvania, in through southern New England, and then they reach the coast by Tuesday evening. You see those darker brown shadings down to Long Island, down to the Hudson Valley and northern New Jersey, and then extending on up in through New England and on up into Maine. So depending on how this surface low evolves and how it tracks out, I think we have a shot here for some severe weather. It's very early in the game, and I'm going to wait till probably Monday before getting really wrapped up in it. When you look at the surface, of course, we've got this high coming in for the weekend. Not a whole lot happening in terms of rain showers. We've got some showers on Saturday along the coastal Carolinas, probably some pop-up showers and storms across the southeast and back through the Gulf states, which is typical. Then as we move to Sunday and Monday, we're still dry here. I think the humidity may actually be okay right into at least Monday morning before we start to see the dew points come up. And then here comes your wave. And it looks like it's going to track across Michigan and upstate New York. There'll be a trailing cold. There's going to be a warm front and a cold front. The warm front's going to come through Monday night. Some areas are going to see showers, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of warm frontal thunderstorms out of this. And then there's going to be a cold front that will approach for late in the day and into the evening hours. So this is where I think you might see some strong or possibly severe thunderstorms. The only thing I would caution is sometimes when you get these warm front cold frontal situations, the warm front doesn't come through clean. In other words, you get showers and thunderstorms overnight into Tuesday morning, and then it takes a long time for the clouds to break up so that you can get some daytime heating, because that really is going to be key if there's going to be any thunderstorm development. Even though you're going to be in the warm sector, you're going to want to see how much daytime heating are we going to get if it winds up raining into Tuesday morning till about 8 or 9 o'clock, for example. Then you're going to lose some daytime heating during the afternoon. When the cold front approaches, it might have a little bit less to work on. Again, this is very much a short term. This is a Monday night, Tuesday forecast problem. Couldn't possibly tell you the answer right now. So then that front goes by, and here's where I want to set up the end of next week and beyond. This is going to be another frontal boundary that's going to stall along or just inland of the southeast coast later next week. And you can see there's low pressure there in South Carolina with showers and thunderstorms, and that wave is going to go out. One of the things that's going to happen is when the wave goes out, the frontal boundary is going to shift to offshore, and this is where we're going to watch to see if something happens, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes, if you get a second wave to develop, you wind up getting that wave to gradually, it'll start out as simple cold core type wave, and you'll gradually get that to warm up and become tropical. Now, the models sort of hint at this, and we're far into the long range, but the models have been kind of hinting at this idea. You've got these two really, these small closed isobars. I don't know if you can see them very well on this map. I'll switch over to the other view because you'll see this a bit better here. But you see what happens here. This wave goes out, the frontal boundary shifts to offshore, and then you get another secondary wave that develops. So that's what we'll have to watch to see if any of the if a secondary wave develops. The frontal boundary itself just degenerates into nothing because the atmosphere is very warm this time of year. The ocean water temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s off the southeast coast of the U.S., so it's got that working in its favor. It's a very, very tropical environment overall, and under the right conditions, if you get favorable upper air winds, you're going to see, you might see something come out of this. Now, I will also caution you that if something were to come out of this, as far as the Northeast is concerned, what do you have? Look at the flow in the Northeast. I'm running this backwards. The jet stream flow in the Northeast is running through much of next week. You've got a northwest flow down into Maryland and Virginia, and a westerly flow. When I say westerly, winds going west to east of Virginia out into the Atlantic. So it would seem that anything that forms out here would probably go out. Over time, models are trying to build this ridge northeastward to Virginia. So I guess the possibility always exists that something could get left behind. Look, I'm just kind of openly speculating here. This is just, I'm throwing ideas out there in terms of what we might have to watch down the road. But that persistent northern jet is there at least through 240 hours. I'm using the prior run, not the current run. This one keeps this northwest flow going right through the 10-day period and beyond. And here comes another deep trough into the eastern part of the United States toward the end of the month. So I maintain that you stick with the pattern you got until you got clear indications that something is going to change. Now, I'll show you the satellite loop of the tropics tonight. We're just having a little trouble there, it's loading up, but you don't really have too much happening here. The tropical Atlantic's got what looks like an active intertropical convergence zone with a lot of showers, all totally disorganized. There's still a ton of shear out around the tropics, both in the subtropical and tropical Atlantic and across parts of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. You have an upper trough north of Hispaniola extending northeastward out into the Atlantic for hundreds of miles. You can see those clouds are moving, you've got clouds blowing off from south to north. There looks like there's some kind of upper low that is here. I can see a little bit of counterclockwise rotation. So right now, conditions in the tropics are anything but favorable for tropical cyclone development. But I think toward the latter part of next week, we're going to have stuff to look at from the standpoint of the tropics. All right. So, one last thing, and then before I come to the chat board really fast, tonight's radar. And again, if you are watching this, it's dated. It's 8:27 Eastern Time. 8:27 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday night. So obviously you're going to want to check your local radar by going to weather.gov and going to your local National Weather Service to see what's happening. Okay, the showers up in the Dakotas, the showers and thunderstorms, that's where we have that working tornado watch. You're seeing in the cold upper air, unstable air in upstate New York, getting some thunderstorms off Lake Ontario, and then up in northern Vermont and into parts of Maine, getting some showers. Some showers and storms from Arkansas across Mississippi and into Alabama and right along the immediate Gulf Coast. Radar was a bit busier in Florida earlier this afternoon, but it's calmed down there. You've got action in the southwest with some scattered showers and storms there, and starting to see showers and storms forming and moving northwestward through parts of northern California, northern Nevada, and on up into Oregon. That's our other area of severe weather risk for tonight. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just shift the map over. Oh no, did you get to see the east? There's how it looks in the east, and that's how it looks down over Florida. And here's a close-up view of those heavy thunderstorms that we're seeing. Where'd they go? There you go. In South Dakota, where we have that working tornado watch at the moment. All right, let me come to the chat board very quickly here. Give me 1 second. I hope everybody's got some plans for the weekend. I'm supposed to go fishing with my buddy Phil. We were going to go tomorrow. We were going tomorrow morning, but he's got to work late tonight. So now he's thinking maybe we'll go Sunday, but he hasn't. The tides tomorrow favor us having to get out at about 6 a.m., which is I'm really in favor of. So I'm waiting to find out whether it's going to be tomorrow or is it going to be on Sunday. Nice to see everybody on board tonight, by the way. It's a Friday night, which is a tough night, but we got a nice little crowd, which is great. And, of course, when the weather picks up, we're hoping to have more. Anthony Orr, Robert Brown, Snowy23, Scott Briller, Jason Schaefer on here. Is Timothy on here? Mark Glatfelter, nice to see you on board. And Johnny Quest, of course, rows in every day with getting ready to go over the 100-inch mark there in Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, in Western Virginia. I don't know how I got Pennsylvania on my mind. Johnny Quest, you poor guy. Timothy Veltman, damage up in upstate New York with some of those thunderstorms. Those cells actually were surprising here downstate too. It was a little bit surprised that they were as strong as they were in some places late yesterday afternoon. That southern end of that line wound up having a bit more support than what either the model or SPC thought. Shows you, by the way, how volatile some of the forecasting can be in terms of having to react on the dime. You know, it's sometimes you look at things and you think it's going to come out one way, and suddenly it comes out slightly different than what you planned. This is the nature of the business that we are in. MZ Sphalerite, I hope I said that right. Gary Lazak and his reoccurring cycles. I don't follow him. I have to tell you quite honestly, there's only so many hours in a day, and unfortunately, I got to spend a lot of time with my own stuff, and I rarely get an opportunity to read others. Plus, I don't want to be biased by anyone else's weather opinion. I do occasionally read one of my favorites is Cranky Weather Guy on Twitter, but I try not to read him until after I got all my stuff done, because he's very good. It's just a matter of my own personal approach. If you're a young forecaster, I would strongly advise this, that you really just shut off anybody that's around you in terms of weather, because you want to learn from your own mistakes. And I did that from the very start of my career. I really paid very little attention to what other people said until after I had my own forecast, and I stuck with what I had. And that is a good thing to do, because you want to have the confidence in your work. So I strongly advise, if you are a young forecaster that wants to do this as a career, make sure that you shut everybody off while you're working, and you can go afterward after you've made your decisions, but not before. Okay. Scott Briller, I mentioned last night that this summer reminds you of the summers in the 70s, 80s. Let's hope that the winter doesn't follow the non-winters of the 70s and 80s. I would agree. There's no real correlation between one or the other. It just happens that what I'm seeing is what I'm feeling this summer. The way things have been happening with these fronts coming through on a semi-regular basis kind of reminds me of those summers back in the 70s and 80s. But just because it's like the summer is like that period, it doesn't necessarily mean that the winters are going to be the same thing. Robert Brown, you passed your final inspection. That's good. Glad to hear you got your stuff all fixed up with regards to your rental. Very heavy rain today, says Carl. Car recalls around New York City. Around 5-ish. Yeah, there were a couple of pop-ups, and they were isolated. They went through really fast. If you watch them on the radar, they literally last about, their life cycle is about 30 or 40 minutes. They come and go so darn quickly, and they can get pretty strong for a short period of time. So if you were unlucky enough to be underneath them, you got hammered. But we're talking about, I would say 95 to 98% of the folks in my area didn't see a thing today. Daniel Seaman, nice to see you on board. We wonder if we turn all our fans in one certain direction, if it would make a difference? Yes, that's a good question. I would think not, but actually, I forgot which way. If you got ceiling fans, I think if you want in the summertime, you're supposed to have them counterclockwise, and in the wintertime, you're supposed to have them clockwise. Because this way, in the summertime, you get it makes it cooler, and in the wintertime, it takes because heat rises. So in the wintertime, you want the heat to the hot air to mix down to the surface, and in the wintertime, you want the warm air that's collected down at the bottom to just to evacuate it. I think there is a logic to that. And I got ceiling. I'm sure most people have ceiling fans. They work wonders. They do keep you cooler and give you a little break on the air conditioning. Okay, so look, let's wrap it up tonight. Thanks for being here. I know Friday nights are nights that you want to get out there and enjoy yourself. So please do, and do so safely. Johnny Quest, with northwest winds on Sunday, will that cause downsloping and cause temps to rise? The air is pretty dry. It's not, we're not talking about a 15 or 20 knot northwest wind, so the temperatures might come up a degree or two, but I don't think you're going to have much, in terms of temperature rise on Sunday. It's a little different. You've got this high coming down from the north. You're going to be deep into the core of the cool air, quote unquote. And in fact, Sunday morning is going to be quite cool. Probably going to see a lot of my area down in the 50s, and even the warmer urban centers Sunday morning will be in the low 60s. So I think you should definitely look forward to that. William Huber, I don't know if you're still on. David Schwartz, thanks for being here. 99 Wolves, I haven't seen you in a while. I hope everything is good by you. And I think I got everybody in case Erica Baker, of course. And I think I got everybody. If I missed you, I'm sorry. I'm scrolling through. I always like to make sure when I start saying hello to one person, I want to make sure I say hello to everybody. But I got to go. So have a great weekend. And I'm thinking I'll probably, stay quiet this weekend. I'll do Weather in 5, which I didn't do today. But I'll do Weather in 5 for Saturday and Sunday, so you'll have something and give you some hints as to what may or may not be going on in the longer term. And we'll be back with a full live stream on Monday, unless I decide on Sunday night to jump on board. But if I do, I'll pre-schedule it ahead of time so that you'll know it. Have a great night, everybody, and a great safe weekend.